Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of Take One. Today, I am so very excited because I'm going to be interviewing Oscar-winning costume designer Deborah Lynn Scott. Deborah Lynn Scott is an absolute legend, and in my opinion, she has designed some of the best and most iconic costumes in film history. Deborah Lynn Scott has worked in movies such as Back to the Future, Heat, Titanic, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, Minority Report, Legends of the Fall, Avatar, and the upcoming Avatar: The Way of Water. Thank you so much for joining us today for this interview, Deborah. As I said, I am a huge fan of your work. You have designed some of the most iconic costumes in film history, so conducting this interview is an absolute dream. And once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Jumping into my first question, I just wanted to preface it by saying that a couple of days ago, I rewatched Avatar on the big screen, the re-release that it's on screen in theaters right now. I absolutely loved it. It's a gorgeous film. The costumes are absolutely amazing. That said, many of the costumes in that film were brought to life using CGI. And that brings me to my first question, which is, in what ways is designing CGI costumes different from designing live action ones? And how does your approach change when designing costumes for each of these mediums?
Well, it's very interesting. The first film I was brought in on late in the process. And for a little bit, they didn't really have a costume designer because for the reason that everyone thinks, which is it's a CGI film, right? So you're going to have, it's done in a computer. So a computer artist can do things. Well, that's clearly became not the case, especially for Jim. And I think the ability that they had to sort of, and you'll see it even more in the sequel, how fleshed out and how beautiful everything is because I think he realized in the process that the costumes needed to be made in order to be rendered perfectly in the virtual world. So I have to say, I think in terms of the conception of the film, in terms of design, was mostly Jim. And by the time I got there, I was really fulfilling a lot of kind of promises and things like that. But it was such a whole new world that it was, it was like half the time I spent going, what am I doing? I don't know anything. But the basis of costume design is exactly the same, no matter what you're designing. You're designing a costume or clothing for a character that lives in a particular time and place. And those characters just happen to be 9 foot tall blue people. The hardest thing is the technology and learning the technology to go from an actually made costume to the virtual version of it. It's quite a journey. And but it starts the same way. Like you think of the character and what they're doing and the particular place they live and their community of people that they live with. And we made the things that I made and all the costumes that we made for the sequel are made to human scale. So, and literally everything's made. Every single costume, just like you would, we put them on real actors, we, put in real life, or a real live action movie. So, and then the secondary part is to get those costumes rendered into the virtual costumes.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, excellent answer. Thank you so much. Now, as I mentioned, I rewatched Avatar in theaters, and a little surprise that I wasn't expecting to see was a scene from Avatar: The Way of Water that they included in the credits for the first film. And I will just say that as soon as that scene started playing, my jaw dropped. It looks absolutely insane. The visual effects are amazing, but the costumes, oh my God, the costumes in that little scene are so breathtaking, so good, so unique, so original. And that brings me to my second question, which is, in this short clip, we saw members from the Omaticaya clan, which is the Navi tribe of the forest that we saw in the first film, but we also saw members from the Metcaina clan, which is the Navi tribe of the ocean that we're going to be introduced to in Avatar: The Way of the Water. My question is, in what ways are the costumes of the Metcaina clan different from those of the Omaticaya clan?
Firstly, they have a different physical structure a little bit. So there were some adjustments we had to make there just practically, right? Thicker necks, broader tail. And I think for Jim, the biggest hurdle to get over for costumes was that they had to do a lot of swimming underwater. And what did that mean? What effect would that have on their clothing? And to take that into consideration as the designs are being done. But in terms of design, the two clans are, one is a very foresty, land-based clan, and then there's people who live near the ocean, on the water, in the water, and things like that. And it's literally like, go to any kind of research in the contemporary world of people that live in different places like that. They tend to dress differently. There's a lot of things that bind them together because they're all Na'vi, but there's the fact that they use the environment around them to create their clothing. So whereas one of the woodland people would use an acorn or leaves or things like that, the water-based people are using shells, seagrass, and things like that. So their materials are different, but they're bound together in their love of weaving, of craft, and of very personal, very decorative way of dressing.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really great answer. Thank you so much. But okay, that brings me to my next question, and that is, there's no way of talking about your incredible work without mentioning Titanic. Of course, you won an Oscar for the costume design on that film, which we can see in the background over there. Congratulations, by the way. And in my opinion, the costumes in Titanic are some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. I was really blown away when I saw that film for the first time and I saw what you did. And that brings me to my third question, which is, when making Titanic, how challenging was it to recreate real historical pieces of clothing? And did you take any creative freedoms when designing these costumes?
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. It was a very, very, like, the standards of Jim is a very exacting director. And again, this is a Jim Cameron film. He has a very clear image of the kind of the result he wants, but he doesn't necessarily know how to go there because he's not a costume designer. He doesn't really understand all those things. So in terms of creative freedom, I had a lot of creative freedom. But having said that, we're working in a historical period that is well documented, right? There was photography all over the place, black and white, mostly. And so there, I read a lot of books about etiquette of the period, just so you would know, like, when do they wear gloves? When do they wear hats? And how many times a day do the upper class change their clothing for which events? So it's really dictated. It has a very, very strict rules about what you wear, when you wear it. I think we took a little creative license with the third class passengers. We made them more fun and probably a little more decorative than they might be in real life, although it was, again, well supported with documentation. I mean, even doing the uniforms there's tons of research that you can follow, and Jim would make, you've got to follow it to the T, right? It's got to look just like it needs to look, perfect. So being another, luckily, big budget, there was enough money to do what we needed to do. We had a long prep time, which was really, really important because many things, all the principal clothes had to be made because they just, they don't exist. Although we did have a lot of vintage clothing that if they fit people, they were good to go. And I was allowed to do a lot of shopping kind of worldwide, looking for hats and accessories and jewelry and all those things that keep it from being too manufactured and too today. And really, you start to look at, like, oh my God, that's a real hat from the period. That's phenomenal. So it made the things that we had to make harder because the real things it was a period of incredible glamour, incredible, like, use of how much clothing cost, fashion. It was one of the high points of all those things. So to do it as well as the real stuff was the biggest challenge.
That is fascinating. Yeah, thanks. That's really, really great. Now moving on, if you ask me, honestly, what I think is one of the most iconic costumes in film history, I have to say Marty McFly's costume from 1985's Back to the Future. That is just one of those costumes that just sticks with you for your entire life as soon as you watch the film. I absolutely love the costume, and that brings me to my fourth question, which is, How did you come up with Marty McFly's incredibly iconic costume? And why is he wearing a red tee, a checkered shirt, a denim jacket, and a vest all at the same time?
Well, again, thank you. That was a super, it was a very, very fun movie to do, right? And plus, it was basically a comedy. So you had a little bit more leeway, like how to texturize the design of the movie so that it was fanciful in its own way. And I played a lot with kind of pattern on pattern, and even the denim jacket had kind of different denims, and I put a lining inside that was custom made, that I did, that gave it a little bit more kind of, flair or whatever. And he had the suspenders too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was, what was fashionable at the time, number one. Number two, I knew that the character had to, like, kind of when he got in that costume, he was going to stay in that costume for a long time. So I wanted to create a layer thing where he could take one piece off or switch it out, or, so that you had a little bit more kind of fun stuff to draw from rather than just t-shirt and jeans.
Fair.
So that, yeah. And we shot during cold weather, so it made it kind of fun and easy to do the layers. And it also trying to sort of draw a line between his contemporary self and the clothing that people were wearing at that time, and then go back in time and make it look quite different. So he became a whole different person.
Yeah, no, well, you absolutely nailed it, because it's incredibly iconic. I absolutely love that costume. Now, the next question that I wanted to ask you is, what advice would you give to anyone that is interested in pursuing a career of costume design?
Well, I think that you have to, obviously there's some skills involved, right? And I think the best designers, there's fashion, which is completely different. The best costume designers have a lot of kind of basic skills. We know how to work on a set. We know how to sew if we had to. I'm not a master sewer, seamstress, cutter, fitter. I can't, but when push comes to shove, I can jump in with the best of them if I had to. So I think all of those, because then you have an understanding of the jobs that all the people around you do, right? So you don't just come in and say, well, I'd like this, and then gather the troops. It's like you work together as a collective with people with lots of different skills who can bring something to the table. So you have to be a very collaborative person. And I think that you have to obviously have a lot of ideas and be able to express them. That doesn't mean you have to be a good artist, physical artist. There's lots of ways to get across ideas. Sometimes you can do it with words. And sometimes you need to sort of sketch things out, or maybe you have an item that kind of references something that you want to do. So the way to communicate is really all over the place. So someone shouldn't think that they have to do one thing, right? They don't have to have every skill in the book. And I think other than that, it's like, as you go through your career, you have to take the opportunities that you're given, right? And then you take that opportunity and you do well. There's so much you learn through a long career like mine. Like, oh, I wish I never had been like that or done that, or, you learn all these amazing skills as you go along. And a lot of them are political or personal or things like that. But you're always growing. You're always taking the advantage of what you did last and what you can do next. And just do your absolute best with the luck that you have, because there's a lot of luck involved.
Definitely. No, that's some very sage advice. And I think it not only applies for people who want to be a costume designers, but what you just said applies to pretty much everything. Just, being persistent and, knowing how to work with a team, knowing how to collaborate with others. Those are some very important skills. And thank you so much for all of that. Now, the last two questions that I wanted to ask is, first, what is your favorite movie costume? Like, what is that costume that inspired you and that, like, really got you excited about this craft?
I was thinking about that, and I think Was this the same question? Is this my favorite? Did you want to know about my favorite movie or the costumes in them?
I wanted to ask you both of them. I wanted to ask you about your favorite film and your favorite movie costume as well.
Yeah, well, they kind of go hand in hand, and it goes back to what you were saying about seeing Avatar as a young child. And my father was a big movie buff, and of course, I wasn't alive but I was really liked old movies. Like I started watching movies when I was quite young, and I would watch movies from the past. So I was a huge Wizard of Oz fan as a child, and I only got to see it on television. So it came out once a year because we didn't have streaming. We didn't have all the incredible conveniences that we have now. So we'd have to wait. And it usually was around Easter time. And the first time that we had a color television, because each time I watched it, I would watch it from probably 3 years old. Right. And then I had a black and white television. So it was always black and white. And that reveal, when we finally got the color TV, when she opens the door and it's in color, was just absolutely mind-boggling. It blew my mind completely. And I was like, this is the magic of cinema. So the costumes that Adrian did for that movie, everyone loves, the Munchkins, and Dorothy is so iconic, but I absolutely fell in love with the pink Billy Berg. It's just phenomenally made. And when I had the opportunity to see that movie on the big screen, eventually you can see like the amount of detail and just absolute craft that went into each and every one of those costumes. The makeup, how the things went together is really, really phenomenal. So yeah.
That is a great pick. I absolutely love Wizard of Oz. And yeah, the costumes in that film are just so inspiring and so classic, like so perfectly timeless. It's absolutely incredible.
I mean, you can't do better than that, really, right?
I would argue you have reached that same level.
Sweet.
But yeah, no, it's really funny to see how these films that that we watch when we're very young, and they really capture our sense of wonder and the inner child inside of us, and that child never dies. It just stays with us in the memories of those films that we watched. So Deborah, I think that's it for the questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, I'm such a big fan of your work that doing this was an absolute dream. I am so thankful to you for agreeing to, join us in this interview. I just wanted to say that I can't wait to see all the costumes that you created for Avatar: The Way of Water. I am so excited.
Okay, well, you get in touch after you see it and let me know what you think.
Oh, so. I will. I'll definitely will. But Deborah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. I love talking about the craft and my work, and I'm very grateful that people are interested.
Yeah, no, yeah, they should be. Your work is absolutely exceptional. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all so much for watching. But that's gonna be it. Goodbye.
Okay.